Indeed, with Bryce Zabel, Richard Dolan. Let's come back and take some phone calls with them on Coast to Coast AM. Bryce, let me ask you, do you think panic will occur if and when?
Well, I think panic will occur in some regard because we'll cause it. We'll, as we were discussing before the break, we're going to do certain behaviors that are going to make people think that the world's coming apart at the seams. But you know what? This all goes back to its first incident in 1938. If you think about the War of the Worlds, the Orson Welles broadcast has provided the founding take on this whole thing that the powers that be could easily argue, well, we dare not disclose. Look at this panic that this War of the Worlds thing caused. But if you think about it, the War of the Worlds was literally telling people that they were on the ground and killing people. And what disclosure is more likely to be when it happens in our lifetimes is going to be someone simply acknowledging the fact that, as we said earlier, some of these things are made by somebody that isn't us. And that doesn't necessarily cause us to go panic. I think the panic we're going to see is going to be self-induced, and then it's going to be a cycle of violence. So, for example, the real question is, will there be martial law? There might be in certain places. It will depend. Not everywhere, but some places we think there will be martial law. We think the first week will be pretty messy, and then hopefully cooler heads will prevail. And then again, that's why we hope the book will be useful in that regard.
One of the important things in writing this book, honestly, was to show that there's another way. There's a high road that can be taken with disclosure. It does not have to end with a boot on the face of humanity forever and ever. It could end with more freedom, not less freedom. But it has to be done through a great deal of courage and integrity and political leadership that we generally don't see. But consider that, dramatic times, great times can and often will produce great people who will rise to the occasion. And I think that disclosure will certainly offer this possibility. That, in other words, where leaders will have their own personal moment of truth, where they might actually just think, I've got an opportunity here. We can do something that can be worthwhile, rather than create a complete global fascist state. We can do something that's better than that.
Well, if you think about it, whoever is on the job in the presidency at that point is going to realize that whatever his or her agenda was up until that moment, it's going to be replaced entirely by the fact that he or she is going to become known in history as the disclosure president. And I think Rich is right. The better angels of that person's nature may rise, and that person may try very hard to do the right thing. I mean, I certainly would, and I bet most of your listeners would say that if it was their call, they'd try to do the right thing. So we could get lucky.
We're in a dangerous era in many ways. Everybody who's got a brain knows this. We've got economic and environmental problems, and we've got this global political kind of big brother thing that really is happening. NSA now has got this $2 billion complex, and they've got every single email that probably every one of us listening has ever written. They've got it. And so we're moving into this one possible world where you're under surveillance 24/7 and monitored and controlled. But disclosure can open the floodgates to people, the people, realizing that we can do better.
George, you asked earlier about panic, and I'm not sure I specifically put what I think about it out there. We have the technology that Rich is talking about to spy on ourselves and to do all kinds of nefarious things. But that technology is also going to do something that it won't quite be panic, but it will be disruption. In other words, the minute this goes down, all our cell phones are going to be sending each other text messages, and the phone lines are going to go down because they'll be overused. And we will instantly, talk about a flash mob. We're going to be able to pull together huge protests, huge rallies, huge everything, instantaneously. If disclosure had happened in the 60s, it would have taken a little bit more organization to pull it together. Now we've seen these events in the Middle East and around the world, and in our own country with the Occupy movement, where the cell phones the pace of our communication between ourselves and amongst ourselves is something that will have its own dynamic. And I wouldn't call it panic, but I would call it disruption.
Maybe the happiest person in the first week of disclosure might be Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Facebook traffic just going through the stratosphere?
Oh, my God.
Well, I would imagine that that servers will be crashing and phone lines will be crashing.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing, Rich and I even discussed this in the book, when the servers crash and the phones don't work, it's going to be because of overuse. But initially, people are going to say, some people anyway, are going to say, oh my gosh, we're under attack, oh my gosh, the government's cracking down or whatever, and it could just be a systems failure at that time.
Could be. All right, let's go to the phone calls. Here we go. We'll go to Springfield, Mass. Sheila, east of the Rockies. Go ahead, Sheila.
Yeah, hi, George. Thanks. I have some questions for Richard. I'm going to try and rattle them off as quick as I can, then I'll take my answers off the air, okay?
Okay.
Richard, question number one. Do you believe that the United States government is in very intimate contact and collusion with the aliens, or are the aliens remaining very elusive and enigmatic, and the government can't quite nail them down, and all we can do every now and again is retrieve the occasional crash vehicle? That's my first question.
Okay.
Question number two. President Jimmy Carter, he was known as the energy candidate when he was running for president. He was really big into energy science. He understood energy probably more than any other president before or since. But if he was suddenly told about the aliens, wouldn't that have made him happy? Like, oh, good, we have energy technology that can save us. But he continued to strive for another energy policy. So what can you say about his energy policy versus his knowledge of the aliens? And
Great.
Question number three,
okay.
You talk sometimes in your various lectures, Richard Dolan, you talk sometimes about what you call breakaway societies. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that? Thank you so much. I'll take my answers off the air now.
Okay, let's start with the government in cahoots with the aliens.
Yeah, thank you, Sheila. Well, I was going to mention the breakaway society concept in that first question.
All right.
The question whether the U.S. government's in contact or any kind of intimate contact. We have to be careful when we say the government. What is the government? Is it the president? Is it the senators and the congressmen? I don't think that's what we're talking about here. What we've developed in the post-World War II era is a deeply, deeply powerful and expansive black budget society and infrastructure that really has no effective oversight. And I've come to call it a breakaway civilization. The basic idea is very simple, which is that if you've got clandestine technology that's squirreled away, that you are not sharing with the rest of the world, and you start developing your own innovations as a result of that, well, science doesn't just go in a linear way. It builds on itself. And so I think it's very likely that this clandestine group could be vastly ahead of the rest of us. And I do believe that is the core group that's actually dealing with this problem. Are they part of the U.S. government? Well, I think it's just as likely that they've got a great deal of private money that's in the mix. I think it's a quasi-private, quasi-public type of operation, and I'd like to know more. I'm not part of the club, so it's I've got my limits. But I think that kind of contact with these other intelligences, I do think that there are groups that have such contact. That's my opinion, just based on the various things that come across my desk and come to me. The Jimmy Carter issue, why would he have been upset? It's a great question, because you'd think, well, the president would get access to all of this possibility of releasing fresh energy onto the world. But very likely, my own speculation, he was upset because he realized that this problem was beyond his control. That would be my first guess, that this is an awesome problem that he really does not have operational control over. And then, again, I've sort of explained the breakaway civilization concept, so I think that's basically what we're talking
It's also possible that Jimmy Carter was a very religious man. It may have offended him in some level on that level as well.
Yeah.
Could be. Okay, yeah. Let's go next to Whitehall, Pennsylvania. Woody is with us, first-time caller. Hello, Woody, go ahead.
Hi, George. I have 2 points and then one quick question, and
Sure.
I can take it off. Sir.
Okay.
For Richard.
Okay.
We always assume that the aliens are somehow altruistic and they're giving us technology and helping us to live happier lives. I mean, if you think of it, I mean, they have to be 8 billion years ahead of us. I mean, they would look at us the way we look at ants. Mm-hmm. I would think that they would either come here and either eat us, eradicate us, or put us into slavery. I don't understand this altruism.
I don't either. This has never been my own opinion. I don't think it's Bryce's opinion. I think that, honestly, I think you got the good, the bad, the ugly. The higher up the food chain you go, I think you have the more possibility for variety. An ant or, I mean, what evil ants are there? What evil dogs are there? They don't think like that.
Well, Hitler had advanced technology. It didn't make him a good guy.
Exactly. So I think that the more sophisticated we get, the greater the range you can get from the demonic to the angelic type of people, and I think it could certainly be that way with other beings. You can get them all.
Hope for the best, plan for the worst.
And then the other thing is that you've got very serious researchers who are, in their own research, are encountering what they believe are extremely benevolent other entities and extremely malevolent other entities. You're seeing it all. And the question arises, are they both right? And are all the others right? Do we have, is it like the Wild West out there? Or is something else going on? And we have a lot to learn still.
Oh, we sure do. Okay, we've got time for a few more before the break. It's Michael's turn in Newport Beach, California. Hey, Michael, thanks for calling, and welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Sure thing.
Hey, Richard, I was curious on what your take was on that, how the aliens play more of a role in the disclosure, and how I believe that they actually have a lot to do with the disclosure itself, and I believe it should be a little more brighter than it sounds, because you would think they would want us to, all work together. And I was wondering if there's an awareness or awakening of a lot of people that would come together, that this way the transition would be different.
I want to make sure I'm understanding your question, so that the possibility that there is a kind of a benevolence guiding this process, and that humanity itself can awaken and maybe assist this process along. I think that's what I was understanding by the question.
Yeah.
Well, there's a very large body of people in this kind of UFO consciousness field who believe that and argue that it's our own human consciousness that needs to be elevated to a certain level in order for us to really deal with these other beings in any productive way. It's a matter of consciousness. I don't have a hard and fast opinion on that. I do think that our own awareness and consciousness is extremely important in this. And furthermore, I think that that would be very useful in dealing with other benevolent and not so benevolent entities. We need to get our own game up. Most of the world is not in a position where they're thinking in terms of higher consciousness. And certainly it's an important thing for all of us to increase our own awareness, our own wakefulness, you might say. So, we're in a big mystery here. Who are these other beings that we're dealing with? You've got a lot of people making claims one way or the other. And I think caution is really the watchword for this.
Let me just throw one sidebar on that.
Sure.
If there's one thing that we could say over the years, that the breakaway group that Rich and I talk about, which would be the sort of the privatized government, quasi-government body that may have been managing the secret, and the others, which would be this collection of other beings, the one thing you can say over the years that those two groups have agreed on is that it ought to be a secret. So there is something in common between the others and the breakaway group that they share, that they think it needs to be quiet. Otherwise, the others could have revealed themselves to us at any time, and they haven't. They haven't landed on the White House lawn. They haven't blown up the White House. They haven't done any of the things that happen in the Hollywood movies. They've kept it on the down low. So is the breakaway group. So that, to me, raises certain questions about whatever the agenda is, and it tells me that I don't have all the answers.
No, you don't, but you got a lot.
Yeah, we have enough to speculate, and we have a lot of contradictory information, and that's why I think people want disclosure, to be honest with you. I think we all know that something is going on, but we live in an internet world where people are willing to throw every kind of theory in the world out there, and we would just like to know what's really going on. How do we reconcile all the very, very different things that are reported as part of this phenomenon?
And you call this, Bryce, you call these visitors the others.
Correct.
Why do you say that?
Well, because I think we have to, Rich and I talked long and hard about this, and we decided that we should call them the others because that's all we can say for sure is they are the others.
Are they really visitors?
We don't know that they're really extraterrestrial. Aliens? That's not necessarily been proven, or that they're ultra-dimensional, or that they're intelligent machines, or that they're time travelers. There's a lot of different theories out there, and all we know is that they're not us. They're the others.
Well, they're not us, that's for sure. Richard, what's next for you after this work?
Well, I've got a new audio lecture series / book that I'm working on, actually. It's kind of a cool thing, kind of an online university called the International Metaphysical University. Awesome. I'm teaching a course on the Introduction to Ufology there. It's basically a series of audio lectures. I'm turning it into a book. I'm calling it UFOs for the 21st Century Mind. And it's really my attempt to grab this whole field, everything about it, and to try to write a comprehensive 300-page book that really takes it up to date. There's a lot of UFO books that are out there that try to deal with ufology and the whole study, and most of them, honestly, are just kind of obsolete in my opinion. So I wanted something that was current, that dealt with the history, that dealt with the research, how to understand this philosophically, and what are we dealing with? Everything. The science behind UFOs, all of this is going to be in this new book, which will be out this summer.
How about you, Bryce? I'm waiting for your next television home run.
Well, one of the things I would like very much to do is to turn AD into a television series, because I think it's a new window into this, into drama and sci-fi. And so hopefully I will be hitting the rooms in Hollywood this summer to talk about AD. But the thing that is on the front burner right now is the thing that I've talked to you about already, which is the Magic Men Project, MAJIC, which is it's a film that the script is literally coming out of the word processor this weekend. And it is the film story of Stanton Friedman and Don Schmidt and the competition to break the Roswell story. And that, I think, is the kind of film project. We talked about all the alien invasion things and so forth, and I'm as guilty as anybody about doing it. But I'd like to write, and I have written, a project that is based and grounded more in the street level of this phenomenon, and it's really the story of two down-to-earth guys breaking a story that's out of this world. So I'm very excited about that. That is exciting.
I have to say I read that script, by the way, and it's awesome.
Super. Bryce, I'm going to be in Toronto on June 23rd with Stanton Friedman. You might want to come up there for that. We're going to come back in a moment. We're going to take final phone calls on Coast to Coast AM. Yeah, on our next program, David Wilcock joins us. He's going to be talking about the source field investigations about hidden science and lost civilizations. Looking forward to that. David's a great guest here on Coast to Coast AM. When we come back with Richard Dolan and Bryce Zabel, let's take final calls. Okay, here we go with Richard Dolan, Bryce Zabel, final segment. We'll get to all your calls in just a moment. Richard, if it were up to you to make this disclosure to the American public, how would you put it? How would you phrase it?
Great question. Well, you'd have to be careful. I wonder about this a lot. You wouldn't want to have to be the person to make this announcement. At least you wouldn't want to make it lightly. But I do think that at some point, if I were to make it, I would say this is a reality that has been kept from people for a very long time. There may have been a proper reason in the early years to have such secrecy if you're trying to figure out what's going on. But we're at a point now where the secrecy dangers have outweighed any dangers that we have from knowing what is the truth. That our humanity has been held hostage, and we need to work together as a global community to find out what are the true answers to this. If I were the president, then I would know that I'm automatically at odds with my national security apparatus, which probably wants to keep this under wraps. And I would take measures to ensure my own safety and to have my own people that I could rely on to do the proper investigation and really find out what the truth is so that I could relate.
Although, George, we've actually answered that question entirely. We actually wrote the president's statement and have it included in the book.
You did. That's true.
That's right.
I would probably come out and say the movie To Serve Man, the Twilight Zone show, is accurate.
Yes.
We're being taken and eaten.
We taste like chicken.
Well, then I think you could properly say you will create panic.
We would create. Yeah, there's no question
Indeed.
about that.
But one of the things that we so enjoyed about writing the book, in between each chapter, we have what we call vignettes, which are really documents from the future. And the first chapter, which is all about what happens on day one after disclosure, includes the president's written comments. And to answer your question, one of the things I think he would do is he would certainly want to reassure people that they had it under control, whether or not they did. He would certainly be doing that. And on a more humane level, I tried to think of like what would the based on what political candidates and how they speak and so forth, we think the president would probably also speak directly to the nation's children and try to calm them.
The thing about trying to inspire fear, incidentally, through an announcement, which we talked about a little earlier in this conversation, you're riding a fine line there, because if you go too heavy-handed with the fear-based message, you really are in danger of having things spiral out of your control as well into full-blown panic, which I can't think any political leader is going to want that either. So you're going to want to keep things calm. You want to be the voice of authority, but you got to keep things calm enough. And it's a very difficult thing, because once you mention this reality, people are going to want to know everything all at once.
That's why we think that the president would probably bring to his news conference the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of Defense to assure people that the economy was being handled, and probably to explain the shutting down of the stock market, and also to assure people that we were not under imminent attack.
No, that's true, too. Okay, let's take final calls. It's going to go by very quickly. West of the Rockies, Steve in Portland. Go ahead, Steve. Thanks for holding so long.
Okay, you guys were talking earlier about the UFOs and nukes press conference that took place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you look at the news, October 2010, which was just after that, if you remember, there was a report that surfaced on CNN and various other places about nuclear weapons at F.E. Warren losing power outage, base shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Robert Hastings did some research into that and got some phone calls, and being the diligent researcher that he is, he's convinced, because of multiple reports from the inside and from the outside and from police, some of them still on duty there, which he cannot reveal their names, that there were multiple reports of a large UFO hovering over the base at the time of this power outage. If you remember, at F.E. Warren in Wyoming, just after the press conference. And if anybody wants to learn about this, they can Google it or go to his website and read an article on it. So this stuff is current. Now, here's my question for you, Richard Dolan. What recent sightings, cases, maybe over Russia? What's going on over Russia right now? There's a lot of UFO reports coming out of over.
There sure are. Well, first of all, I just want to support what you're saying about the research that Robert Hastings does, which I think is very important. And the Warren case is a great case, and I'm glad that he's been able to open that up a bit. Over Russia, you've had, over the last month, a number of sightings over St. Petersburg and around St. Petersburg.
Great sightings.
Absolutely top-notch, and from multiple sources of something that is over that city with configurations of lights that just are not – there are known there are no aircraft that we know of that have these types of configurations and are hovering low, descending, doing things. Well, this is an ongoing thing. It happened in mid-April for a few days in a row, and it continued to happen in May. I don't know what that is. I've been wondering about this myself. Even if you hypothesize that it's some kind of unmanned aerial vehicle, like a drone that's terrestrial manufacture, I keep wondering, well, what, how does it do what it does? Is it just a bunch of rotating propellers that allow it to hover like a helicopter over there to do all of this? It's obviously not a helicopter that thing is, and so I don't know. It's one of these things. There, to my knowledge, there are no independent researchers on the spot who have submitted any results of their investigation. So I'm over here in the States. We're all over, many of us in the United States. I don't know what the Russian investigators have to say about this, and we need to follow it.
Okay, next up we've got Glenn in Tampa, Florida. Good morning, Glenn. Thank you for calling.
Hey, George, how you doing?
Good, Glenn. We're well.
Hey, you know that I was just thinking about the alien that was on Twilight Zone. I think he was also the same guy who played Jaws in the 007 movie.
Richard Kyle.
Yeah, I think he's the same guy.
Yeah, I think you're right. Very tall man.
Yes, he is. I was going to ask your guest, I heard a while ago, this was years ago, that NASA, on the NASA channels that we used to get all the time, shows live images of the shuttle and the space station and all, is that at one point the astronauts, either it was the space station or the shuttle, freaked out because they saw something coming at them, and all of a sudden the NASA channel blurred out everything, and then from then on everything was time delayed. And I was wondering, was that true that really happened? And if it is true, what possibly could have been that they saw? If there's anything out there to help us figure that out. I'll take my call at the air.
All right.
I think the origin of that is the 1991 STS-48 event, which is a little bit different, I think, than how you described it. But they did go on a delay after that. And what happened was in September 1991, you've got the shuttle cameras captured what looked like this object that appeared outside Earth orbit. Cameras followed it for a bit. You see a bright flash at the lower left of the screen, and something looked like a projectile or something shooting up from that direction, and then the original object zipping away. There's been so much argument and debate over this, but it is my understanding. I don't know this for sure, but the researcher Kevin Randall was pretty sure about this, that was when they began the delay after that. So if that's the case, I don't really have a reason to doubt him on this. That is that's a telling statement.
It's a huge statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
How about the talk that Neil Armstrong, when they landed on the moon in 1969, said something about they're on the edge of a crater and they're looking at us? Did you remember that one?
Oh, yeah. This one comes from Timothy Good.
Right.
I spoke to Tim about this. The source of that story was a very close friend of his, a woman who I think recently is deceased. He gave her name, and I can't remember her name off the top of my head. But here's the deal. She was at an event with Neil Armstrong. She was close enough to him to hear him, this is her story to Tim Good, to hear him describe that when they were there, they were being observed the whole time, and apparently it was deeply upsetting to him. She relayed this to Tim Good, and he put it in one of his books and had occasionally mentioned it at various conferences. And she died just less than 5 years ago, and Tim, as a result, gave her name out.
Did Tim believe her?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question in my mind that he believed her. She was a close friend of his. He trusted her implicitly.
Of course, Buzz Aldrin's been on the record and off the record on this same issue over the years.
No, that's true. I was on Larry King with Buzz when he kind of waffled around on that.
That's right. You're part of this history.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go next to Tampa, Florida. Marcus, thank you for calling. You're up with us.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, Marcus. Thank you. Caller. Sure thing.
I have a question. Do you think, with all the sightings and stuff that we have going on, and the government knows what they know, and the military, do you think it'd be possible that these beings or aliens could have some kind of mind control over the government or the military and allow, and just have some kind of control, let's say, over their minds?
You've opened up, that's a huge can of worms there. I will say this. When you start looking at abduction reports, I happen to believe that there are abductions. One thing is very clear, that these other beings have the ability to get into your head. They can, they communicate only through telepathic means. And so my reasoning is any being that can get into your head that way would have the ability to affect your thoughts in one way or another. And this is when you talk about screen memories that abductees have, or repressed memories. I think this is what's happening. So yes, I think that they have an ability to affect our minds. Now, on a larger question of control over the government or black budget people, do they have that ability to exert some kind of mind control? That's a little more speculative. But I think that when you're in that classified world, when you're in the need-to-know black budget community, these people, it's their very nature to maintain secrets lifelong. They don't usually talk. A few of them do talk, but when they do, it's very, very quietly and without giving away too much.
Isn't it amazing how Neil Armstrong virtually didn't talk at all after he came back?
Oh, God.
Publicly.
He certainly did act like a person that had a profound, obviously he had a profound thing happen to him. He walked on the moon, but he also seemed to withdraw from the public discourse.
It was amazing. You would think the first man on the moon would be on every talk show in the world.
Absolutely.
Although wasn't he known for being kind of a reserved personality?
Yeah, but, NASA should have said, look, we know you're a civilian, but we insist that you've got to do this when you come back.
I would have thought so.
He just disappeared.
And even now, he's still really standoffish.
Oh, he's invisible.
Yeah. We tried to get him on the program a couple of years ago. We came darn close, but when it all came down to it, he wouldn't come on.
Wow, yeah.
I mean, we got really close.
Well,
only a few of the astronauts have really had a major public career after that, when you think about it. I mean, Buzz Aldrin, Edgar Mitchell.
Yeah, that's it. And let's not forget the case of Gordon Cooper, one of the original Mercury 7 astronauts,
right, who
chased some UFOs when he was up there.
And apparently said he was a witness to a landing at, was it Holloman?
Yeah.
Yeah, he, not a direct witness, but he
heard from some higher-ups.
The guys there, yeah.
I'm surprised to hear that Neil Armstrong was going to appear on Coast to Coast, because I can only imagine.
Well, we tried to get him.
Yeah, he would have realized that your listeners would have held him accountable for all of these rumors and so forth, and he'd have spent maybe that's why he decided not to do it. He didn't want to.
Yeah,
he didn't want to put up with that.
Maybe he had to say exactly what happened, and he didn't want to do that.
Probably not.
That's why silence is golden sometimes. Mm-hmm. If you're not on a talk show, then you're not going to be confronted by some of these things.
Well, you'd have to ask from Neil Armstrong's point of view, what would he gain by being grilled by coast-to-coast listeners?
Yeah.
Good point. Maybe not a whole lot, right?
Let's go to Kansas City. Jeff, take it away. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yes, I find it kind of ironic that you said it would be the greatest disclosure since Jesus Christ. But my contention is that disclosure has been made by not only Jesus Christ, but by Eisenhower himself. Jesus Christ said that he came to set the captives free. The implication is mankind was imprisoned. Mm-hmm. And the implication was by fallen angels who were hell-bent on ruling over his creation and his people. Now, I find it also ironic that technology came a great deal after World War II in Operation Paperclip, when we got a great deal of technology from Hitler, who claims that much of their technology came from occult sources.
True.
So I equate these spiritual forces that I think religious propaganda has made out to be demonic and angels with wings as being highly technological agents of God that had come to earth and in the book of Enoch said given technology to man.
Well,
now, Eisenhower said, beware of the military-industrial complex. And you also see that today we see fascism. I know we beat the Germans in the war, but we never beat the Nazis, as Jim Marrs made clear in his book.
Yeah, they're still out there.
Right. You see that same domination mindset and theory being operated in through elitists, which also Satan and his gang, I guess, wanted a progeny in the earth who would rule over man.
Jeff, you make some great points. The clock, of course, has got us. Bryce, thank you for being on the show.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
And Mr. Dolan, always a pleasure.
Loved it, George. Thank you.
The name of the book, AD, After Disclosure, when the government finally reveals the truth about alien contact. And believe me, if they do, we'll be right here with Richard Dolan and Bryce Zabel telling you all about it. Keep your ears on your radio and the eyes in the sky. For Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladouceur, Timothy Banal, Stephanie Smith, George Knapp, John B. Wells, Ian Punnin, and Art Bell. I'm George Noory, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.